evening all. I welcome you all to the special talk on transforming higher education experience for enriching career enhancement post COVID-19. I welcome today's distinguished speaker, Mr. Sai Kiran Dudiala sir, our head of department, Monica Suri ma'am, my co-panelist, Dr. Vinod M. Lakhwani sir, and all participants. Thank you for joining us. It's my privilege to introduce today's distinguished speaker, Mr. Sai Kiran Dudiala sir. He is a National Operation Manager, Career Labs. Mr. Sai Kiran is a multifaceted senior management professional inclined to managing operations and delivery with hands-on experience driving processes and uniting people in high revenue generating organization to deliver optimal performance. He is too functionally head to post-sales operation team at Career Labs. He study abroad division in partnership with Byju's classes. So now I will request, without wasting much of time, Mr. Sai Kiran sir to take over the session. Sir, all yours now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pritesh, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you, Dr. Monica, for welcoming me and for that, giving me that entire warm feeling of somebody being there, right? It feels so much like a live session right now with all this streaming happening. And good evening, Dr. Vinod, sir. Right, so I hope I'm audible. Yeah, I hope I'm audible loud and clear to all of you and I'm visible as well.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So let's get started. If you're going to look at my face for whatever time that's given to me, you're going to get very bored. So I'm going to quickly show you something as well, so you can keep seeing my face and my screen, side by side. So is my screen audible with the PPT there? Yeah? Okay, great. So what are we essentially going to talk about, right? So we understand that, yes, things have been much different, right, last year. And if somebody had come to us in Jan 2020, when we were all shouting Happy New Year and 2020 is the year, where we wanted to get things done, somebody came and said, no, nothing of that is going to happen. Everything's going to change, right? And everything's going to be, dictated by this very small organism that's called Corona or the COVID-19. I would have laughed in January, right? I would have said, very great joke to start the year off. But we did not realize something like this would happen. And, and I am personally, a great believer of the fact that in every adversity lies a seed of opportunity, right? And I think all of us as human beings have realized that a small virus can transform the way that we learn, transform the way we recruit, transform the way we upskill ourselves, transform the way we work, and has changed so many things. Right. In fact, the amount of time that we are spending with our family has increased. The time that we're spending for ourselves to take care of ourselves, be it gymming, be it walking, be it reading, be it upskilling. Right. All of that has changed, and because of this one small, organism. And I think that's the reason why we're having this amazing session today. Right. I'm going to talk to you about basically how this COVID-19 episode has changed the higher education experience for all of us. And, I am assuming that the participants here come from varied backgrounds, right? We have educators, we have students, and we have TPOs as well, right? What is our duty in this entire transformation, right? Are we also going to get flustered like the rest of the world? Are we also going to get worried like the students who are there? Or are we going to remain calm and are we going to guide our students? Right? So what is the role that we as educators have to take, and what is the clarity that students have to take, right? After this entire episode, that's what I'm going to talk to you about. But the question that you may have, why are you coming and talking to us? What's really your qualification? Why are you the best person to come and talk to us, right? So I'll spend about 2-3 minutes in telling you my journey, right? So that you understand what is my interest and what is my expertise and why am I so excited to talk to you about this one small topic that's been given to me, right? So that's my name, Sai Kiran, and that's a photo that I took when I was going to office with a lot of haircut and proper hairdo, but now we are at home. And in Chennai, the saloons are also closed, so there's a lot of hair that I'm growing. But I currently head the academics and operations at Career Labs Technologies Private Limited, which is the study abroad division of Byju's classes. We'll talk about it in a bit so that you understand why I have the expertise to talk to you, right? Now, my story is no different. Like all the other 10 lakh engineers who pass out every single year, I was also an engineer who passed out in the year 2012, but I was special in the fact that I did not do EC, EEE, computer science, all of those mainstream engineering branches. I did this engineering that's called material science and engineering, right? I do not know how many of you have heard about it, but material science and engineering is that branch of engineering that deals with iron, carbon, steel. How do materials change their properties at different temperatures? What can you do to them? Nanotechnology, all of those buzzing words. And when I joined engineering in 2008, all of these were big terms, right? People never knew what they were. And if you ask me today why I chose material science and engineering, I would say I chose material science and engineering because I liked the name of that degree, right? That's what I would say. And that's one thing that I keep telling people whom I interact with. Don't put into something without knowing what it actually is, right? And that's going to be one of the premises that I'm going to use to talk in today's session, right? But nevertheless, we'll come to that. I started with B material science and engineering. A couple of years later, I realized that material science is not something that I was interested in doing. But then I come from Chennai, which is a very, very, education-centered city, one of the education-centered cities in India. And parents in the south are not as open as parents in the north. If their son, the eldest son of the house, comes back and says that he wants to quit engineering, you can expect a kahani ghar ghar ki to happen in the house, right? So obviously, I did not have the guts to confront my parents, so I continued doing material science and engineering. Finished it, obviously, because I was in one of the best colleges in the country, which is Anna University. It's one of the top engineering colleges and the oldest engineering colleges in Asia, right? But in the second year and the third year, something that I realized is that, because engineering was not something that I wanted to do, I had to have something else to survive, right? And what is it that I had to survive? English was something that I was good at, and I was a school topper in English, and I was very good with communicating. So I thought I'll take that as a profession. So I started teaching English, started with, teaching English to housewives, basically who wanted to learn English, and then came a long way from there to now training CEOs and CXOs on communication skills, right? That has been my journey in the last, 12, 13 years odd. And then because I had my interest in education, I went ahead and did my MBA in education and HR management from Symbiosis Institute of Management, Pune. And I actually work with multiple organizations across the country. One definitely being Byju's classes, but the other, I also consult with Cambridge Assessments English, UK. And one of my main responsibilities with Cambridge is to ensure that English is taught as a language and not as a subject anymore, right? Because in India, that's one of the biggest problems, right? English is taught as a subject. It's just a paper that people have to clear. And it's not even an important paper because India runs on science, math, and technology, not really on English, right? So one of my missions, or one of the different things that keeps me alive every day, is to ensure that the schools and the colleges that I deal with teach English as a language, and people also perceive English as a skill more than a subject, right? That's what I do. That's what I do with Cambridge. But with Byju's, I head the operations and academics. And within Byju's, I'm sure you must have heard about it, right? Byju's is known for kids in the class 4 to class 12 segment. And you must be wondering, what is this guy doing over there, right? He said he does not like science and math. So I still do not like science and math. But within Byju's, there are multiple divisions. One of them is Disney Byju's, which is with young kids. I work for another unit in Byju's that's called as Career Labs. And this deals with bigger kids. When I say bigger kids, all those confused graduates and postgraduates across who still do not know what they want to do, right? They may be pursuing their MBA, but if you ask them what they really want to do in life, they may not have an answer. And a lot of my friends, right, it's been about 10 years since I passed out engineering. A lot of my friends also don't have the answer to that question if you ask them now, right? So what does Career Labs do? Career Labs is the only organization in the entire country that's partnered with giants across the nation, be it education, be it knowledge partners, be it recruitment partners in animation, technology, banking. And we're trying to solve one problem, right? These organizations do not get the right candidates to work with. And a lot of amazing candidates in India they do not know how to work with these amazing organizations. So what Career Labs does is basically it's like a bridge in between these amazing organizations and these amazing students, so that we help students get the right jobs and the right organizations get the right students. So one of the other motivations that I wake up with every day is to make a difference in the life of at least one student, so that there is some clarity that I can add to a student. So day in and day out, my work involves talking to a lot of students, helping them take decisions and helping them understand what they really want to do. Right now, the reason why I'm explaining all of this to you is because I think that makes me, the right person to come and tell you what exactly we have to do and how things have changed after Corona, because there's a lot of doubt, there's a lot of anxiety that people have, right? And we as trainers or educators, it becomes very important for us to stay strong in this entire journey. So what am I going to talk about today? Essentially, I am going to talk about, how has higher education evolved over a period of time, right? What has been the focus? How have things changed? And what is the need of the hour, right? How has Corona come into picture and changed the entire equation? That's what we're going to talk about. The next thing, now that we know what the need of the hour is, the next amazing thing that we have to know is what should a person do to plan his higher education journey right now? That's what I'm going to talk about next. Then I'll take you through some question answers and give you some closing remarks. So I would want to keep my presentation as simple as possible so that at least the 1 or 2 points that we drive are driven straight back into your head, all right? Now let's start with the timeline of higher education, right? Now, we all know how higher education has evolved in India. So we start from, I've named them different phases: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, and phase 5. But what I essentially mean is that they are all different times or different timelines as far as India is concerned for higher education, right? I would want to, bring your attention to phase 1, where we were all, or where Indians were all undergoing the Gurukul system of education. And at that time, if you notice, people did not study high levels of science and math. All they studied were skills that they needed to survive in the world after they come out of the Gurukul system of education, right? It could be mantras, it could be shlokas, it could be the Vedas, it could be the way of life. It could be, helping your guru do a lot of household chores, helping your family run, cook, cut vegetables, cut down trees. This was what actually people learned in the Gurukul system. And I'm sure all of us know what happened, because we've seen a lot of, Mahabharata and Ramayana on Star Plus. So we know how things work, right? We know that the basic education to survive was actually, the primary focus of people back then. Now then what happened? Eventually, man started competing. It became survival of the fittest. The British took over. And people started to study not to survive anymore, but to earn more than others, right? So I will do 1 degree, I earn more than you. If you do not do any undergraduate degree, you earn less. And if I am well educated, I get to work with the Britishers on high funda governmental roles, or I become a bureaucrat or an aristocrat. If you don't study, you do menial jobs, right? So phase 2 was where higher education evolved to a place where we said, okay, I'm going to study because I want to earn better than you, right? I want to be in a better educational strata or a social strata than you are in. That became phase 2. Now, slowly after that, right, it again went back to upgradation for survival, because economy changed. A lot of people started doing basic, degrees after their schooling. So education, this is where engineering, arts and science and all these basic degrees came into the picture, where we again started studying for survival, right? So I finished my schooling and I want to become, let's say, I want to become somebody who builds buildings. Then the solution was to do civil engineering, right? I wanted to be somebody who drives an aircraft or who designs an aircraft. So you become an aerospace engineer. I wanted to be somebody who works in the bank. So you do your bachelor's in commerce or master's in commerce. So if you look at it, the education bar raised and people again started doing their higher education for survival. Then what happened? The entire craze of going abroad came into the picture. because everybody here was doing a BE or a BTech or a BCom or a NEMCom, and it was very common. It became very common in India. So people said, great, I am going to become better. You have done a master's, I have done a master's, but I will do my master's in the US because I want to be better than you, right? And I will want to do my master's in the US because I want to earn better than you, or I want to live in a different social strata, right? Different level in the society. So again, education moved on to, places where we wanted to compete with other people. So if you look at the first 4 phases of the evolution of education, it has been more about survival, competition, survival, competition, right? Now, if as a basic guy who deals with a lot of data day in and day out, if we were to extrapolate this pattern again, we now see that the higher education segment has come back to a point where we want people to survive, right, more than competing. And I think Corona has taken us back to our basics, right? What is it that we should do? Because there is no dearth for engineers these days. There is no dearth for people who are doing their MBA these days. Everybody has an MBA. Most of us have an MBA. Most of us have a master's degree. But what differentiates me from you is the question that recruiters ask, is the question that TPOs are finding very difficult today to answer to a company, right? Because I have interacted with a lot of a lot of TPOs, and TPOs keep telling us one thing. Sir, when we approach a company for recruitment, the question is, how are your students different, right? How are they skilled? How are they better compared to the other engineers, right? So the online episode, the episode of learning online, the episode of, doing a lot of other additional things has started dominating education. More in terms of competition, more in terms of survival, but less in terms of competition. And if I were to predict it well, phase 6 will be a place where online education will start talking or start making people better in terms of competition, because that has always been the trend. Survival versus competition is what has always happened with engineering, right? Now, why are we not so okay about this? If you look at the current, if you take today, right, there are 2 generations that are involved in the entire education industry. One is a generation of educators, right? People like us who have years and years of experience teaching students. We have more than 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. We have a set of people who are very senior in the system. And they are used to something that, has been there for ages and ages together. We were just thinking, okay, online stuff is making our life easier. But suddenly then a virus comes and changes the entire picture and say, no, you can't do a classroom class anymore. You have to do that online, right? So one set is finding it very difficult to transition, which is the senior set, right? One set is finding it very convenient to transition because that's the junior set. And there's one set that's being born with the online, teaching world, which are your kids, right? It becomes very difficult because for me, it becomes very easy because I do not have too many years of teaching experience. It's just 10 years odd. And I have always taught online. So for me, it doesn't become a big deal. I can always wake up and start doing an online class. But for people, for teachers whom I've been addressing since the onset of COVID, they have 35 years of teaching experience, HODs of various departments. And suddenly when we ask them to take an online class, they go blank, right? And students do not also have access to all of this transition that's happening, right? So there's a huge gap in what needs to be done and what is being done, right? So given this entire set of, ups and downs that are happening, the next question that we obviously have for today is, what is, or what are the different ways to equip yourself, right? So this is where I have something very, very interesting. There are 2 ways of equipping yourself. One is go with the flow method, or which is the Indian method, right? And the other one is plan, practice, and prepare, which is the method that I always keep telling students, but that never happens though, right? So what is the go with the flow method, right? The go with the flow method is typically, that's typically me talking to you, right? You do not know what to do with life. You take engineering because your parents have asked you to take it. You explore it for a couple of years, did not like it, land up in a teaching job, you like it, so you sort of change your entire trajectory towards teaching, and you become a big shot in teaching. That's go with the flow. Now, I am at least happy that I chose something different that my friends did not choose. But a lot of engineers these days, they study civil engineering, drafting and measuring and drawing and all of that, and they work for IT companies, right? A lot of mechanical engineers, I do not know why they work with the lathe machines and all those drilling machines and all of that, and they keep coding in front of systems, right? And a lot of people take pride in doing this because they do their MBAs later and they become professionals later on, right? So the go with the flow method is there, right? And I'm not saying that it's wrong, and I'm not saying that you cannot be successful without the go with the flow method. You can still be successful, and I'll be very proud to say that I chose the go with the flow method, but I at least had control over what I was doing, right? And I'm sure a lot of teachers who are on my side would also accept with me saying, yes, we all landed up here. We did not know what we were doing. We landed up in the job and we liked it, and so we eventually became better at it, right? But for the students who are attending the session today, guys, if there is one thing I really want to tell you today, please do not go with the flow, right? It is time you start planning, practicing, preparing, and performing. And that's very important as a professional, right? If you would ask me today saying, if there's one thing that you would want to change with your life, maybe this is what I want to change, right? I would want to go back in my timeline, plan, practice, perform, and keep my entire profession the way I wanted it to be shaped, and not in the way that it took me to shape it, right? So what is this plan, practice, prepare all about, right? So let's take a typical example. I'm assuming, most of us, are either engineers or law students or MBA students over here, right? So that's the crowd that we have. And if you look at it, this is what we have, right? And unfortunately, what happens is that's what most of us have till the end of our degrees, right? Guys, that's not enough. That's definitely not enough, because as I already told you, we have now come to a phase of education where we are trying to survive, where we are trying to compete with other people. So there may be lakhs of other people with the same degree who are passing out, but that doesn't really suffice to what the industry wants today, right? So what are the different things you should do, right? And if you want, you can definitely take a screenshot of it and use it as a checklist. But I am telling you guys, do all of this and see your career changing. See the way you approach career changing, right? Now, what is it that you should do? Definitely, number one, we have a basic degree. All of us would get a basic degree. It can be a BE, it can be an MBA, it can be an LLB, it can be anything, right? In addition to getting a basic degree, I would start wanting you to do specialization courses, right? Now, what do we mean by specialization courses? Let's say you are an MBA student, right? Your specialization can be a CFA. Your specialization could be a digital marketing course that you take from an IIM. It could be anything to do with, let us say, consulting. It could be anything like a Lean Six Sigma certification, or it could be anything like a PMP certification that you're doing, right? A basic degree does not help you get into the industry anymore. What really you should do is try taking specialization courses. I'll tell you how to choose a specialization course in a couple of minutes from now. But that's your first step. Never ever be satisfied with what an engineering degree gives you. Never ever be satisfied with what an MBA degree gives you, because what's more important is how you are special, right? Remember the survival and the competition strategy. What makes you special? Courses and online specializations are definitely something that make you special compared to the other people whom you're competing. Now, it doesn't end there. Yes, you take a course, that's amazing. But what's more important than a course is to go ahead and do a project, right? Now, this cannot again, randomly be some project. It has to be a project that aligns more with your career goals. That's very important, right? So I will talk to you about it in quite some time, right? Do a project, and just don't do a project because you're asked to do it and your teachers are forcing you to do it because you have to get the degree. No, that's not how it works. The project, if you understand it, is a turning point of your life where you realize what you like and what you don't like, right? If you were to ask me, a project is more like a dating phase where you date all your subjects, you work with all your subjects, and eventually like, or you decide whether you want to take this for the rest of your life or you don't take it for the rest of your life. That's where projects come from, right? So doing a project is very, very important, right? That's something that you have to definitely do, and there is absolutely no compromise on that, right? Now, life gives you multiple chances, and the second chance of dating that it always gives you is internships, right? Now, why is an internship very important, right? I have one of my seniors who keeps telling me this, right? You pick up a lot of qualities from your first reporting manager, right? For example, I learned how to write emails from my first reporting manager, who's a very strong woman, by the way, right? She used to head the operations of the company in which I worked with, right? I learned how to be nicely firm, and that's a skill that not many people have in corporates today, right? You pick up a lot of your skills in job from your first reporting manager, and the internship gives you that opportunity, right? So an internship, many people say that an internship actually gives you the opportunity to see whether everything that you learned in your books is working in a company. That's great. It does do that. But what it also does is to help you understand what people undergo when they actually apply what you're learning, right? Because taking a class is very easy, let me tell you, right? I mean, it has its own challenges, but applying all of those concepts in a real world corporate scenario is what is really required, right? And an organization would love to have people who already have the experience of working in a corporate environment, because it's easy for them. They don't have to, spend too much of time training you guys, right? The next most important thing, you may do projects, and a lot of people do internships, courses and all that from Udemy, Coursera, and a lot of online platforms that are available today. And COVID has, in a way, given us all these courses for free, right? But what's more important is to be recognized, and that is where the certifications come into picture, right? Make sure that you always have a certification. It is to understand that a certification is different from a certificate. You may have hundreds of certificates, but one certification is equal to a lot of other certificates that you may get as a part of your course, right? Make sure you always write an exam, clear the exam, and have a certification with you. I give you a lot of examples, especially if you are looking at MBA, you have the Six Sigma certification, or you can do a digital marketing certification. A lot of the top colleges in the country today are giving you a lot of certification exams. Take them up. The last thing, the most underrated qualities of building up a great profile: aptitude and communication skills, and presence of mind, right? Now, we always think that we are Indians, so we are great at math, right? We may be great at math, but to solve those questions in 1 minute is what requires aptitude, right? So aptitude and communication skills are very, very important. You may have 1,000 ideas in your head, but if you're not able to communicate them well, then all of those ideas become theoretical stuff, right? So it becomes very important to keep sharpening your aptitude and communication skills and develop a presence of mind. And how do you develop a presence of mind? I'm not asking you to be a nerd by just doing specialization courses and certifications and internships and keep studying all the time. That's definitely not what I'm asking you to do. Connect with people and build a network, right? You learn more from other people's experiences than you learn from your own experiences. So that's very, very important. Now, if you look at it, the industry today is looking for people with all of these qualities. And that is why it becomes difficult for a lot of people to find jobs. And that's why it also makes a lot of companies get settled down with whomsoever they get, even if they do not have most of these qualities. They can always say, okay, fine, people will come and learn once they are on the job. But guys, if you're able to develop all of this, then there's nothing like it. You'd be the person that the company would recruit first, right? So the last thing, now that we know what exactly we need to do, right? How must someone plan now? So if you were to divide your 2-year course into 4 halves, I would say, especially if you're an MBA graduate, you know what kind of roles or jobs you want to get into. That's your target. Fix up your target and start doing everything that aligns to the same target, right? So in the first year, build network and contacts. This could be your friends, this could be your professors. Very important to know them personally and build a great rapport with them. Second semester, strengthen your contacts and find out what is good for you. You may want to talk to your seniors and your other friends. First year ends. Once you know what is good for you, once you know how to strengthen your contacts, you then start taking all the courses, internships, and certifications that are in line with what you want. A small example, let's say you want to become a data scientist at Amazon. There is no point doing a Lean Six Sigma certification because a data scientist at Amazon requires a very, particular set of skill sets. So you may want to develop those skill sets and focus on upskilling yourself in the next 2 years, next 2 semesters, or the next 2 years if you're an intern, right? So guys, there's only one thing that I wanted to really tell you and drive the point back home to you today, right? It's very, very important to have a plan, right? But it's much more important to work towards it because just having a plan is not going to help you any which ways. Very important to have a plan, much more important to work towards it. And as students, you must start thinking about the big picture, not about just passing a semester or getting an assignment done. That will happen automatically if you focus on the big picture. And I think all the educators who are here today, we are much more than what we think. Our students look up to us in a lot of ways, and we have a huge responsibility that we are shouldering because we want them to do what is good for them and what's good for their career, right? So that sort of brings me to whatever I wanted to say. If there are any questions, I would definitely love to take them. Yes, you can please put in your questions in the Q&A box. I am posting my email ID and my WhatsApp number just in case you would want to, get in touch with me in the future, right? I'll wait for a quick minute to see if there are any questions, and then I'll sort of wind up. And that's for people who want to follow me. I'm very, very active on social media, so you can follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Quora. You can definitely, follow me anywhere, wherever you want to do so. Yes, Dr. Pritesh, I think I'm done. Mr. Srinivasa Murthy has raised your hand, so if you have a question, please do type it in the question box. Yeah.
Yes.
Vinod sir, yeah, you can take Q&A, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm just waiting. Somebody has raised hand. I'm just waiting. Question is there. There is no question. So there is a question. There is one question. The education domain is booming after COVID-19. The certification is required for specialization. Your suggestion?
Yeah. Definitely, I think that's what I've been trying to say over the last 30 minutes. Certifications are definitely required, but the mistake that a lot of people do is they take random certifications, right? And random certifications don't help, right? It is very important for you to take certifications in your domain of interest. More than domain of interest, I think you should take certifications in the domain in which you want to specialize in, right? So for example, if I want to specialize in English, I would want to take a certification in English rather than anything else, right? So identify the domain of specialization and then do your certification, because especially if you're an engineer or an MBA graduate, given that a lot of campus placements may not happen this year as expected, we may have to go to the companies and approach for jobs. There may be thousands of applications, and you will have to make sure to do something that differentiates your application from the rest of it. And certifications is one definite, point that specializes your particular resume. So yeah, that's something that I've always told.
Okay. So there's one more question. How virtual hiring will be different from on-campus hiring?
Yes. So how will virtual hiring be different, and how can we prepare oneself for it? Right. So that's a good question, Mohit. In fact, I will tell you, I'll tell you two things that I think are the answers for it. Number one, whatever answer I'm giving you is just based on observation, because the sad part is that the companies have not yet told us their strategy of how they want to hire virtually, right? But basis my interaction with HRs and basis my interaction with a lot of other industry people, the resume is going to be more strong than it ever was, right? And that's a place where Indians always have a problem, because they create one generic resume for all the jobs that they want to apply in the world. That's what I want to tell you. It doesn't work that way anymore. You will have to start creating job-specific resumes and resumes that fit into the job description well. So as a student, it becomes very important that you know what the job description is and make sure your resume matches the job description. That's number one, right? Number two, it's very easy to cheat people on the virtual world. When I say cheat, you sort of project a completely different attitude on screen, and you may be a completely different person outside, right? Now, students think they're very smart, so they do it very effortlessly. But let me tell you, industries know this better, right? They have seen thousands of candidates in the past, so they know how people change over a period of time. So do not take the panelists for granted. Always try to be genuine, because your words are more important than your actions, especially when you give an online interview. That's very, very important, right? And number three, have clarity. Clarity is very important. You should know what you want to do 3 years down the lane. You should know what you want to do 5 years down the lane, and you should know how this job is going to help you do that, right? That's the third thing that the industry is looking out for these days, in addition to all of those specialization points that I told you, right? So you will have to put in twice the amount of effort if you have to clear a virtual hiring process, because people are looking out for a lot of other things that they would otherwise not look out for. Yeah, I hope I've answered that question, Mohit. Yeah, there's another question by Mohit, Dr. Vinod, if I can take it. Yeah. So the other question is how
yes,
the placement.
Can take. Yes.
Yeah. How should placement officers pitch companies in this COVID era? Mohit, so I'm assuming you're a placement officer now, right? So, Mr. Mohit, what I would suggest you to do is very simple, right? The most common thing that TPOs do these days when they approach companies is just create a very generic brochure, say that, my college has feature X, feature Y, feature Z, so it's better than the other colleges. Remember, companies are not looking at the brand value of colleges anymore. They're looking at the brand value of students. So what I would suggest you to do is always create a portfolio of your students, right? And the most important things, as I told you, the degree, specialization courses, certifications, and their aptitude levels. This is what people are looking out for. So if you can actually create a data visualization, or if you can actually do a data analysis of your candidates, depending on these 4 parameters, and present it to the companies, I think that's what's going to make the companies come to your college for recruitment, right? So always try to understand. So for example, let's say you are approaching TVS, for example, right? Or Tata Motors for a design engineering job, or if you're approaching Tata Motors for a job that is to do with supply chain management, right? You may want to understand the job description of what they are exactly looking at by talking to people who have been in those roles earlier, then shortlist your students accordingly. A lot of times we will find that we do not have students who fit the bill. That's an alarming fact, right? So if we really want our students to get placed, I think you should sort of look at it inside your students, do the data analysis, and then pitch. Data is the key these days, because that's what people will actually, trust, and that's what speaks, right? Yeah, Mohit, I think I've given you the answer to that question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I think there's one more question, if I'm not wrong.
No, Dr. Vinod, I think that's just Mohit replying. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I request Dr. Monika Suri ma'am to give her remarks. Ma'am, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Vinod. And Mr. Saikiran, it was very interesting, though we heard your Byju's co-founder just 2 days ago in the form of a pre-event of this particular conference. And I think he also brought into consideration many experiential learning platforms in the form of different certifications that you're talking about to add value to the employability and employment scope of the students in future, specifically with respect to higher education. So I also feel that whatever points you brought into consideration, they're very basic but very, very important points to be considered, because many times, we start from the complicated aspects and we forget the basic fundamental aspect. This is what the biggest mistake we are doing, specifically as students of business management or maybe as academicians. And when you go for interview, you go with a very high expectation that the questions will be very tough, and accordingly you prepare yourself. But maybe their first question is like marketing and sales. So, but I have thought of business analytics and other big jargons of marketing in mind that this will be asked to me. So you're right that we should not underestimate and undermine and underlie the basic fundamental aspects of learning, which will surely be taken care of now in future, because you know that everything is digital. And I like your terminology when you said that now we can't cheat. So what you're trying to say is like we are very much visible, right? Digitally we are more visible. For example, in the classroom, out of 50 students, I may not know who actually created some kind of nuisance or sound. But once I'm digital, I can see immediately, because that particular buzz, you can see one rectangular line whenever somebody speaks, it will automatically pop up into that particular person. So I think we can befool ourselves, we cannot befool technology. And obviously, though maybe offline we are smarter than technology, but online we can't compete with the technology with respect to its technical aspects. So I thank you for your presence here, and you reminded me of my father, whom I lost actually in the past. But yes, he was alumni of Anna University Madras, 1958 batch. By that time, I think even you were not born, and I was also not born. And he did his BE from there, and then he retired as Chief Engineer PWD. So he was mechanical engineer. So when I heard Anna, so I got connected right from beginning with you, because it actually has some emotional aspect, when it comes to my personal life. So I'm so thankful to you for your presence, and I'm sure that we'll keep connecting with you, because now we are digital. And Career Lab can be a very important, collaboration for us in future also, to bring value and to add value to the impactful teaching learning process that Auro University is already planning in terms of, very vast digital infrastructure to bring high impact teaching learning to our students. So I think that your session was quite meaningful, and I'll surely connect with you after the session sometime when we are done with the orientation programs of the students, and we may invite you there also. And I'm sure there was everything, I think I can see 37 participants over here. Everyone has some kind of takeaway. I also saw in the questions one very interesting question by Mr. Murthy. I think he has mentioned that is there any scope of innovation and placement for 60 years old? Because the further third level of employability, that is equally important. So I feel that you should start thinking in those lines also. So that age groups and categorization should also be the segmentation with respect to your product lines. Because employability is not the need of the hour for any 18 years old or 25 years old or 30 years old. I think that till the time we are alive, we have to sustain, and employability becomes the most important aspect for each one of us. So I just saw that question, that's why I shared with you. So I think it was very fascinating to meet you and see you, and we're surely looking for long-lasting collaboration with BYJU'S and Career Labs in future, and we'll surely connect with you. Thank you. So it's over to you, Pritesh ji, for your further deliberations. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And for the concluding remark, I invite now Vinod sir.
Thank you, Sai Kiran ji, for a wonderful talk, and explaining us how the timeline and the time it is time now to plan, practice, and prepare. And what you said, network and contact, that is what important. Thank you for your deliberation. And as ma'am said, we look forward to again get in touch with you. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you, Sai Kiran ji. We'll surely meet.
Thank you, sir.
We'll invite you in campus also once everything will get streamlined.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all.
Get rid of this COVID-19.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.